Hey, welcome class. In this unit, I'm going to play the role of an immigration lawyer, and I like to call this unit Immigration 101. And I want to start with sanctuary states or city. These are safe zones for those people without any authorization to be here in the US. So let me explain you how sanctuary works for those who do not have any documentation. For example, if an immigrant comes in contact with the police for any reason, let's say that you were speeding and then you get pulled over and then you do not have a valid driver license, that can cause a huge problem. If you are in one of those states, that's not going to protect you. Right now we have about 12 states in the US where migrants are allowed to drive legally in the US. And I'm talking about those who are not authorized. They can get their driver's license like here in California. But let me tell you this, being unauthorized is not a crime. It is a civil violation. And that becomes kind of weird at the same time, because what is really a civil violation and how those people also get deported? Well, the Supreme Court challenged that in Arizona versus the US. The law required that immigrants carry documents providing their status in Arizona and also in Texas. And police were also instructed to stop and seek documents from anyone they suspected of being undocumented. Those without documents faced what the state called a criminal charge. So now this is the criminalization of migrants in the US. During the Obama administration, this was tested in the Supreme Court. And then the U.S. Supreme Court decided that that was anti-constitutional, was against the Constitution, because you're violating your civil rights. And I'm going to explain that more in detail. So this happened during Obama. The Supreme Court struck down that selection of the Arizona law, which is the 1070, show me your papers. And according to the due process, the police cannot detain anyone who has not at least been suspected of a crime. If a police officer encounters someone walking down the street who turns out to be unauthorized, they cannot arrest that person because that person has not committed a crime. However, ICE can do that. Remember I was teaching about those 100-mile zones? They can pull you over and they can ask for your documents. So the line becomes kind of vague, even though you cannot be pulled over just for whatever random reasons. They can do it, and if you're lucky, if you have a good lawyer, then you can contest this and challenge this in court. It is easier to deport undocumented immigrants through civil proceedings. In deportation proceedings, immigrants face the special immigrant judge. The government does not have to provide a public attorney to immigrants who cannot afford one in these cases. So that's really sad. The burden is then entirely on the immigration to show they are in the country lawfully. The burden is then entirely on the immigration to show they are in the country legally. They're also not entitled to any kind of due process. And that's the part where you, as a undocumented or not having any law, you're not protected by the law. There are some immigration laws that can land on immigrant in criminal court. Entering the US illegally is a crime. For example, by staying after a temporary visa, let's say expired, it is a civil violation. As much as 2/3 of most of the people who have entered the US have come and they have overstayed their visa, and now they're here with no proper documentation. Another important legal fact is that holding an immigrant past the point when they should be released, just so ICE can pick them up, is also unconstitutional. Multiple courts have said so, and immigrants can sue the police for unlawful holding. And that's all for this week. I'm looking forward to go over these anti-immigrant laws that have been taken into court since the 1994, 187 in California. then the 1070 in Arizona, and the new one in Texas. And there's so many other laws like in North Carolina that people are fighting for. That's all for now, and I'm looking forward to our next unit.